I start? Okay. Hi, everyone. Let's start the consciousness talk today. My name is Park Jung-yoon, in Tokyo dental and medical student in Japan, and I'm happy to introduce today's talk about Qualia for color and synesthesia. Our speakers today are two speakers from Japan, Professor Ichiro Kuriki from Saitama University and Professor Kosuke Itoh from Niigata University. And our first speaker is Professor Ichiro Kuriki. He will be presenting a multiple representation of color information in human brain. In his career, Professor Creeky has dedicated his research effort toward understanding the human vision system, particularly color vision. And his investigation spanned from experimental psychology to brain activity measurement, patient study, infant study, and numerical modeling. And our second speaker, Professor Kosuke Itoh, will discuss Solfa color synesthesia. Professor Itoh research area covers music and its relation to brain, as well as non-invasive brain wave recording in animals. And he also explores the music function of human brain using EEG and fMRI. So today, 25 minutes for each speaker, and we'll have a Q&A session following the talks. Then, okay, please join me in welcoming our first speaker, Professor Ichiro Kuriki.
Hello, can I start sharing my screen?
Sure.
Can you see my screen properly?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much for the introduction, and thank you very much for the invitation from, especially for Professor Naotsuchiya to give me a chance to talk in front of the professionals of the consciousness and Qualia.
Recording in progress.
I'm a bit worried about the discussions later on because I'm not very familiar with that kind of thing for many years. I have been working on the psychophysics method, and I'm combining the brain imaging technique together to study how we see color. And the reason why I study about color is because if you see world without color, it is very difficult to tell which one is Toro and which one is salmon, for example, on the sushi plate. But if you add color, it is very easy to tell. So it is very informative. But at the same time, you can also see scenes without color. It doesn't appear beautiful, but if you add colors, you can feel it beautiful. So the color is very informative, and also it has a power to affect the emotional part of the brain. But the mechanism of color appearance is not fully understood at this moment, and I would like to emphasize about the difference, what I mean by color appearance in this talk in the following slides. So when you generally ask to report the name of the color of this fruit, probably you will answer orange, and yellow for these three objects. But this is a very categorical kind of representation of color. It uses color names. So yellow and orange and something in between is not regularly mentioned when you are simply asked to report the color of the object. So this is a kind of digital expression. But on the other hand, you can also tell whether these oranges are same colors or not. The shades are actually slightly different. This one is slightly reddish on the left, and the one on the right is slightly yellowish. So you can tell the subtle differences between these two orange objects. And you can also tell the differences in the lightness or brightness here at the shaded area and illuminated area. This part is slightly brighter, and this part is slightly darker. So this kind of subtle color difference is called color appearance. This is called ironomie in Japanese. This is actually a technical term in our field of study. This is a kind of analog expression of the color. So the difference of these two as not regularly, people are not aware, people are not quite sensitive to these kind of differences, and everybody uses color name mainly in the daily conversation. And that caused a problematic situation in this, the response to this figure. This one is the photograph called the dress image, which became very famous on SNS about 5 years ago, more, no, 8 years ago. People argue whether this dress appears white and gold dress or black and black dress, blue and black dress. And that is because colors emitted from the screen is the same, identical. The dress part actually emits this kind of color, pale blue color, but some people assumes in explicit way that the illuminant falling on this object is slightly bluish, and the white object is placed, and that is why the reflected light is pale blue. And the other people consider that illumination must be something yellowish and pale, and the reflected color would be pale blue because of the object is dark blue and black. So the point is that people doesn't recognize or didn't answer to the question about this color, which is emitted from the object toward your eyes, and people are just simply answering to the reporting the color of the material, not the color of the light coming to your eye. By the way, why this kind of interpretation can happen? That is because we usually experience the color of the white object appears white in the direct sunlight, but the shaded area of the same white object appears bluish. It is because the illumination falling on this object in the shaded area is coming from the blue sky. So that is the possible, that is a possibility of the interpretation for the sunny situation in the shaded area, to consider that the illumination is pale blue, and that is connected to the recognition that the object must be white. So that is a reason why we had a lot of trouble with this object. My point is that people are usually reporting the reflectance, perceived reflectance, not color appearance at all. And in reporting the object reflectance, we use categorical color representation. That is, color category is a kind of notion that groups the color of the similar color appearance into the same group. And you can tell the slight differences between colors in this chart, but you can also make the group of colors in this way, like a green object here and the blue here, purple here, and so on. This kind of difference is quite crisp, and it's a discrete differences between green and blue, for example. But this kind of color categorization seems to appear at the very early phase of our life, as early as 5 or 6 months in infant. For example, one of the behavioral study in 1976 reported that differences between blue and green category and green object in the same category appears different to the infant by behavioral study. And we also did a brain activity recording using infant, using near-infrared spectroscopy in occipital-temporal area, and found that the infant's brain responds more to the blue-green color changes than green-green color changes with the same amount of light. And that kind of categorical response is also found in non-human primates, so it seems to develop quite naturally. And in adult humans' brain, the fMRI study has been conducted about 10 years ago, and Brower and Higa reported that one of the part of the higher order visual cortex seems to do this kind of categorical representation. They use colors chosen from a common opponent space. I'll explain this space later, but they chose 12 colors from the space and presented the colors using this kind of pattern. And in one experiment, they asked the participant to report the color category of the color stimulus by pressing red, green, blue, yellow, or purple button. And in other experiment, they are presenting the color stimulus, but asked the participant to do other tasks at the center part of the screen to report changes in the letter, actually one back task to divert attention from the color stimulus to the letter. And they found that the categorical representation by the principal component analysis in the ventral occipital area, this part is showing the categorization of the brain responses in the color naming task in ventral occipital area. V4 and V3 showed a nice color circle, but the categorization is more obvious in VO1. But this kind of categorization was disrupted when the attention was diverted from the color stimulus to the letter. So this kind of study has been conducted on color category, but what about the color appearance? We have, as I have mentioned, we can experience this subtle differences color as we open the eye quite naturally, but nothing is known about this color appearance mechanism. To understand the notion about the color appearance mechanism and its mechanism, this kind of explanation may be clear to you to understand the situation about the mechanism study on the mechanism of color appearance. One of the remarkable notion or the framework to argue the color appearance is color opponent theory, opponent color theory, which is proposed by Herring in 19th century. And he proposed that every color can be represented by the combination of 4 primary colors, and 2 of them are antagonistic and make it the space like this. So red, green, and blue, yellow are the opponent colors. And the mixture of these 4 colors can make any kind of colors you can see. For example, the purple can be represented by the mixture of blue and red, and orange can be represented by the mixture of red and yellow. But you may think that a combination of these 4 color primaries might be arising from the color opponent theory if you have learned something about the color vision mechanisms. So this is a mechanism which lies in the human retina. The 3 cone opponent, 3 cone photoreceptors are first receiving the light falling on the retina, but immediately it will be decoded into 2 color channel and 1 luminance channel. The 2 color channel is subtracting the differences between L and M cone responses to yield the red-green color differences. And the subtraction between S and the sum of L plus M yields color difference into blue and yellow directions. So you might consider that these 2 channels might be corresponding to the 2 axes of the color component color space. But according to the many studies, for example, by the Webster 2000, which asked the participant to report a pure color, which is not having any greenish, reddish part of the yellow, it is called the unique yellow, but the unique yellow falls far aside of the these 2 opponent axes, cone opponent axis. And green also, blue also doesn't coincide with the axis, meaning that these 2 axes doesn't represent color appearance at all. So some kind of mechanisms are performing the representation of color after this cone opponent system. So in summary, the color vision mechanism is understood in this way. For example, at the beginning, the color signal is converted into the 2 cone opponent signals. And then finally, it will be converted to the color categorical representation, which is closely linked to the words or memory, according to many psychophysical, physiological studies. But what is representing color appearance is quite not understood. So what about the color appearance? That is our primary question. That has been our primary question for a long period. And we have used a lot of brain measurement techniques, including fMRI. And in 2015, we published a paper recording the histogram of the cortical responses, histograms of voxel, which is preferring to a particular hue in visual cortex. This is one of the figure from our paper in 2015 showing that the population difference in voxels, which is preferring to various direction of colors in this space. By the way, this horizontal vertical axis is corresponding to the two cone opponent axis. And we found a lot of voxels which is preferring to the individual, intermediate directions. However, we seem to lack in recording the responses, which is one of the main, which is considered to be one of the main color selective responses, which should be recorded in this kind of study along this horizontal axis. So we missing something quite important. So the fMRI or fMRI results should be tip of the iceberg, and something must be hiding behind that. So we decided to do EEG recording using similar kind of stimulus. And we presented color stimulus sized like this, 6° by 6°, which was changing its color in time while it is flickering at 5 Hertz. By presenting 5 Hertz visual stimulus, you can yield a 5 Hertz EEG response. So if you pay attention to the spectrogram and measuring the amplitude of the 5 Hertz component of the EEG, you can tell which color evokes stronger responses than other by taking 24 seconds per cycle. And the participants were doing attention experiment by go-no-go task to keep paying attention to the screen. And meanwhile, we change the color of the checkerboard pattern along this hue circle on the cone opponent space. And the result we've got after averaging 16 participants was like this. If the brain response is solely coded by the color representation is coded solely by this cone opponent signal, it should be elongated into either vertical or horizontal axis like this in, like this cartoon here. But it shows an elongation along the diagonal axis into this direction, magenta greenish direction, meaning that it is not just a cone opponent responses. And I have to skip the details, but due to the time limitation, but the result was like this. So we tried to fit this result by the combination of the cardinal axis model, which is cone opponent axis model, and other model, which was derived from the color appearance space called muscle color space. And it turned out that the combination of the cardinal axis response and the muscle color response with the combination of 60% and 40% was the best, gives the best fit to our data. Which means that the response we've got in EEG is composed by 60% of the color appearance signal and 40% of the cone opponent signal. So that is one of our recent results. And I'd like to introduce our latest study before ending this talk. So this is actually an ongoing project, and I cannot explain everything something conclusive, but I'd like to show this as I'd like to let me explain what we are doing right now to study about the color appearance mechanisms. So we presented a similar stimulus like this on a checkerboard pattern subtending 7.8 degrees on the screen, and we chose 12 colors from the cone opponent space and presented it for 3 seconds periodically on the screen. And we also presented letters, which is changing 1 character by second at a time. And participants were asked to pay attention, fixate at the center of the screen. And we asked participants to do either of these 3 tasks. One of the tasks was to ask the participant to record the categorical color. This is actually the same as Heger's study. Participants who are forced to choose name the color by one of 5 buttons: blue, green, red, green, blue, yellow, or purple. And in color appearance task, we asked the participant to press the button 3 times to report the subtle difference in color by using red, green, blue, yellow. This is actually 4 primary colors in the hue opponent color theory. And the third task is asking participant to pay strong attention to this letter, and in which we ask the participant to report when the letter, which was the same as the one that was presented 2 seconds before, it's called 2-back task. So if the letter is the same as one presented 2 seconds before, subject was asked to press a button. This is actually a very demanding task, and when I experienced this, it was almost impossible to notice whether the color stimulus was presented on the screen on the side of this letter. So the visual stimulus were identical, but we asked the participant to switch the task between these 3. So let me again explain the difference between the 2 color tasks. This is in the color category task. You can tell in regular in daily life, you can report yellow, orange, or orange, but you can use only red, green, blue, yellow, or purple. So you have to change the name for these 2 objects. You may call this red, you may call this yellow, and you may call this yellow. But you can also find these slight differences between these 2 yellow, but you can also find these slight differences between these 2. But you have to categorize. That is a task. That is what the subject brain has to do. So in the color appearance task, you can report the differences by pressing 3 times from using 4 primary colors. For example, you can press red, red, yellow for this reddish orange, and red, yellow, yellow for yellowish orange. And you can press yellow, yellow, yellow for this lemon. And the result was like this. This is a result of behavioral task in color appearance task. The left one is showing the classical result from Debelois using a similar kind of task, and they presented colors along the hue circle, and we in the same way as we did in the fMRI experiment. So what they found was that the response peak for blue, green, and yellow were clearly offset from the cone opponent axis, like those we have found in our behavioral response. So result is successfully replicating the study on the color appearance in the previous psychophysical study. And we try to compare the representation by using this representational dissimilarity matrix. We created the representational dissimilarity matrix from the button press and also the brain activity. And this matrix is showing the differences between the response to 12 different colors presented on the screen. For example, red is number 0 is actually red. So the difference in the response was the biggest for the green. So the color code is showing the distance from 0 to 1, normalized distance from 0 to 1, which is actually the cosine of the vector in this 4-dimensional space in appearance task and 5-dimensional space in categorical task. So in appearance task, the changes or distance changes gradually as the color changes and the paired color changes. But in categorical task, the response changes suddenly as the category changes between the 2 colors. For example, 0 versus 4 seems to be a very different category, so the distance is a maximum. But the border color shows some partial similarity to the category at the first 3 colors in the categorical task. So when we apply the multidimensional scaling analysis to this 2-distance matrix, you can get this kind of representation of the color representation based on their responses in this way. So in categorical responses, we found that 5 clear categories in this MDS result, while we didn't find that kind of categorization in this appearance task. So we analyze the brain activity in this way. We first split the brain into the sector of 5, 5, 5 cube areas and derive the representational dissimilarity matrix for each cube by comparing this pattern activity similarity of 125 voxels between different color stimulation. And this particular slide is showing the difference between appearance and category responses. So in this case, we did not compare the RDM with the button press, but we compare the RDM between brain activities for appearance task and category task. So the blue part is showing the brain regions which show similar responses of brain activity patterns between these two tasks, which can be found in the, for example, visual cortex or motor cortex, which is working for the button press. And you can find a lot of places colored into red, which shows a strong dissimilarity between these two tasks. And by comparing the RDMs between category bold and the category response, for example, you can find a similar areas which show high similarity to between the brain activity and button press. And the one in the top is comparing the categorical bold and categorical task RDMs, and the second row is showing the similarity map for two-back bold and category task RDMs. And you can find that the blue shading is showing the similarity, but the blue shades are disappearing between these two when you switch the bold RDM from category to two-back. As a similar kind of analysis have been applied to this appearance task as well. And we measured the differences in this similarity by switching the task from color task to the two-back task. And we paid attention to these two areas. One is the inferior frontal gyrus. The left part is containing the Broca's area. And one is ventral occipital area, which was reported by the Higa study. And results show larger differences, significant differences when the task was switched to color task to the two-back task in left inferior frontal gyrus. But the right inferior frontal gyrus didn't show significant differences between these two tasks. And the ventral occipital area showed high significant differences. Sorry, I'm using too much time, but almost ending. So this task is shows the similarity as in a similar way as reported by the Higa study. So this is a very premature study. We are just starting the deep analysis, and we would like to apply MDS on both signal RDM by searchlight analysis, for example, ROI-based analysis, and want to see the changes in color representation in areas like which was reported by the Brau and Higa. So sorry for spending too much time, but thank you very much for your attention. This is a summary for this talk, and if you are interested in individual study, please check the article. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thanks for a very interesting talk, Professor Creeky. So yeah, let's move on short Q&A session, 1 or 2 questions. Does anyone from audience who have question to Professor Creeky, please raise your hand. Okay, Ariel-san, please.
Hi, I have just a brief technical question. So when you were showing the different patterns of responsivity to the different cardinal axes of like red to green or blue to yellow for
Yes.
the fMRI data and for the EEG data, and you showed that you had a more isotropic response for the EEG data compared to the MRI data.
Yeah.
I'm just not entirely clear. Is that because like the EEG data might be looking at a broader spatial area compared to the MRI, or just like what could possibly explain the differences there?
Yes, one of the reasons why we didn't get the isotropic response in fMRI is probably due to the size of the voxel, which can contain both red sensitive and green sensitive at the same time. It will know the responses in terms of the color preference. Probably that was the case happened in this the neurons selective to red-green axis. Probably the neurons selective to these two directions might be quite symmetric in terms of population. And if these two neurons are contained in the same amount in the one voxel, it doesn't exhibit a color preference. So probably that is the case. Thank you very much for your question.
Right, thanks.
Yeah.
Maybe then I have a quick question also
Sure.
about the color appearance task. When you ask the subject to press 3 buttons,
Sure.
and then you got the similarity matrix, and then how much variability did you see in terms of the individual difference in the similarity matrix? Yeah, from this appearance task and the category task.
Well, we found much difference in categorical tasks than appearance tasks. I can't show you the individual data in this slide. I don't get each RDM for each individual differences, but they are more or less the same. So this is actually the average result from 5 participants, that the general tendency were quite similar.
Okay.
Yeah, it was slightly different, but yeah, in general, very similar.
Sagar, maybe the last question.
Okay, with regard to the fMRI data again, I'm just wondering what exactly it shows, because the spatial scale is much larger for fMRI compared to, say, single neurons. And it's probably what we're picking up probably is more to do with the synaptic dendritic activity, and not so much the single neuron outputs.
Sure.
So there could be further, integration happening.
Sure.
So the fMRI may not quite be the same as what we perceptually, what we actually perceive.
Yes. Due to the size of the voxel, which is subtending 3 by 3 by 3 millimeter, it's containing tens of thousands of neurons actually. But the pattern, which was created by the special distribution of the voxels, seems to contain some information about the visual stimulus. For example, if you take the visual areas voxels for 100 voxels, you can tell which direction of the bar is presented on the screen, which is somehow spatially degraded scale of the representation, but the undersampled pattern seems to contain some kind of information related to the brain neuron activity underneath that. And that is probably what we are capturing in this method. Thank you very much.
Yeah, okay. For further question, let's discuss after second talks. Thanks. Thank you very much for interesting talk, Professor Creeky. Okay, then let's move on to our second speaker, Professor Itoh. Hi. Okay, please. Professor Itoh, we can hear your voice now.
Can you hear me?
Yes, now it's okay.
Okay. Thank you for this opportunity to give a talk at this nice online forum. I'm Kosuke Itoh from Brain Research Institute, Niigata University, and I'm also a member of Synesthesia Research Association of Japan. So let me just explain briefly about this organization. This association, SRAJ, is an organization for supporting synesthesia research. It is directed by Dr. Yokosawa, who is a leading synesthesia researcher, and all other members are also active and experienced researchers in this field. So please feel free to contact us, as we are willing to help you by sharing up-to-date findings, and also by finding subjects with synesthesia that can participate in your project. So what is synesthesia? Synesthesia is a perceptual phenomenon in which stimulation of one sensory or cognitive pathway leads to automatic involuntary experiences in a second sensory or cognitive pathway. To explain a couple of terms, a stimulus that triggers synesthesia is called an inducer, and the synesthetic sensation that is induced by an inducer is called a concurrent, which is most often color, which is the main topic of our talk today. Examples of synesthesia include grapheme color synesthesia, in which alphabets and digits have colors, and chromesthesia, or colored hearing, in which various sounds induce color sensations, and there are many other forms. Today, we will focus on Solfa color synesthesia, in which Solfa syllables in music, such as do, re, mi, etc., induce color sensations, typically in musicians, but also in non-musicians also, as we will see later. This phenomenon, I discovered this phenomenon and reported it in a paper as pitch color synesthesia several years ago, but I now prefer to call it Solfa color synesthesia because I became to be convinced that the true inducers of color sensations in this condition are Solfa syllables rather than auditory pitches or pitch classes. So let me first start by reviewing what are pitch class, and Solfa syllables. Pitch class and Solfa represent different levels of pitch processing, from low to high. Okay? At the low end, you perceive continuous pitch to the frequency of a tone. In music, however, the pitches are discrete because only a subset of frequencies are used in a musical scale. But in either case, the relationship between frequency and pitch is linear. At higher level, however, musical pitches are organized in the form of a helix, as proposed by Dravish and Shepard. This is because notes separated by an octave are perceived as having a same quality. This is called octave equivalence. For example, sounds of frequencies 220 Hertz, which is A3, 440 Hertz, which is called A4, and 880 Hertz, which is named A5, all have this same perceptual quality of being an A, although they are clearly different in pitch. So the set of pitches that are related by octaves is called the pitch class. And pitches belong to the same pitch class is distinguished by their octave position, and this dimension is referred to as pitch height. In other words, pitches are organized in two dimensions, pitch class and pitch height at this level of presentation. And now the concept of Solfa appears at an even higher level of music cognition. It is a higher representation in the sense that Solfa syllables no longer have a fixed relationship with physical frequency. This is because do can represent any pitch class depending on key. Do is the name given to the keynote of a key, and the pitch classes of other Solfa syllables are determined by their relative relationship with the pitch class of do. Therefore, the qualia of Solfa is determined by the musical context of tonality, not by the physical frequency alone. Now, synesthesia can occur at multiple levels of pitch processing. At the lowest level, the continuous sensation of pitch is associated with the sensation brightness, which is monochromatic. And then, discrete pitches in music are reported to have chromatic colors associated with them, like shown here. In addition, what I found was that pitch classes or Solfa syllables at this level of these levels processing are associated with mostly the hue dimension of color. These are the colors reported by 33 Solfa color synesthetes who visited our lab. I asked them verbally what is the color of do or re, etc. in a random order, and the subjects responded by using a color picker. A surprising finding was that the colors were not random, at least for some syllables. For example, do is red for many subjects, and re is yellow or orange, and sol is blue, and mi is more often green than other colors. The colors for other syllables are more variable, but there are still some tendencies. For example, you don't see much greenish colors for la. You see the average colors down here. If the colors were random, they should all be gray, but the fact that these colors have, the average colors have hue indicates that there are some tendencies for the subjects to certain hues for these Solfa syllables. It is generally believed that the synesthetic sensations are idiosyncratic and randomly determined for each synesthete, but that was not the case for Solfa color synesthesia. The reported colors were consistent between a test and a surprise retest that was performed 5 weeks later. This is a standard procedure for confirming that the synesthetic sensations are real, that they are not lying. If you look at the hue and saturation and the value dimensions of the synesthetic colors, the test-retest correlation was highly consistent for hue, but the correlations were somewhat lower for saturation and value. These low correlations were probably due to the skewed distribution. The saturation and value of these selected colors were clustered around their maximum values. But by contrast, the subject chose a variety of hues for the Solfa syllables, and they were consistent over time from test to retest. So the Solfa syllables were differentiated mostly by their hue, mostly in their hue dimension color rather than saturation value. Another finding was that absolute pitch was not necessary for this condition. This axis here shows the level of absolute pitch. 100 means very accurate AP, absolute pitch, and 0 means no absolute pitch. The test-retest consistency score was uncorrelated with the level of AP. So even those without AP can have this type of synesthesia. So absolute pitch is not necessary. This is the figure I've shown you earlier. The top half was actually represented the participants with absolute pitch. The bottom half show the colors selected by subjects without absolute pitch. You can see that the color selections are also very similar for these two groups of synesthetes. Another interesting observation was concerned enharmonic equivalence. Enharmonic equivalents are notes that have different names despite having the same pitch, such as the notes shown here. When I asked the color of Do sharp and Re flat, for example, Do sharp had a reddish color and Re flat had a yellowish color, although they were the same note in terms of pitch. If you look at Re sharp and Mi flat, there's the same tendency. Re sharp is yellowish and Mi flat is greenish. And those are because the origin. So what this shows is that the colors of these enharmonic equivalents are determined by the original note. The color of Do sharp is similar to the color of Do. The color of Re flat is similar to the color of Re. So the colors were affected by how they were labeled, how they were named. So based on these findings, I became convinced that the colors were linked to the Solfa syllables rather than auditory pitches or pitch classes. First, the findings that AP is not the finding that AP is not necessary suggested that the colors are not directly linked to pitch or pitch class. Okay. Second, the verbal labels determine the color of enharmonic equivalence. Third, that the colors are linked to Solfa syllables is consistent with the introspective reports of many, though not all, synesthetes. And also, there was one case of a French horn player who perceived the color for Do for the pitch class of F. Horn is a transposing instrument, and if you play Do, you get an F. So that's how she got this color for the pitch class of F. And furthermore, I've done some behavior experiments to confirm the link between Solfa syllables and colors. So I'll show you that. The subjects were the 33 Solfa color synesthetes that I've shown you earlier. The stimuli were syllable, visually presented syllable on the screen. And those, the next one, the other one was the auditory presented pitch. The tasks were to vocally report the Solfa syllable or to vocally report the synesthetic color. As a result, first, it took longer to report the synesthetic color than to report the syllable. It takes, so this means that syllables are perceived earlier than the colors. The difference in RT, response time, reflects the time required for syllable to color conversion. Next, the reaction time for reporting the color was shorter with the syllable stimulus than for the pitch stimulus. So the association between Solfa and color was probably more direct. If you present the syllables, you can answer the color more quickly than when the pitches are presented. So the association is more direct. In addition, the accuracy of reporting color for the pitch stimulus did not exceed the accuracy of identifying the Solfa syllables of auditory pitch. It suggests that when the Solfa syllable was not identified correctly, the color was not reported correctly. You have to know the Solfa syllable to get the color. These results led to a two-step mechanism by which pitches in music induce color sensations. In the first step, the Solfa syllables of the pitch is identified from the musical pitch by using absolute pitch or relative pitch. That is by judging the pitch relationship, relative pitch relationship. These are general music faculties that are unrelated to synesthesia. Then, in the second step, the syllables are linked to color. This is the essential component of Solfa color synesthesia and is unique to those that have this condition. So the next question I asked was that the second step, is this the step 2 automatic? Automaticity is an important criteria for confirming that the condition is really a synesthesia. So I performed a Stroop-like experiment. The subjects were 23 synesthetes and 23 non-synesthetes for control. And the stimuli were Solfa syllables, which were presented visually on the screen. And they were printed in, they were shown in different color fonts, either that were either congruent or incongruent with the subject's own color. And the task was to report the font color, ignoring the syllable. And as a result, the subjects were slower for reporting the color of incongruent stimuli, like this one, which means that they could not ignore this syllabic information. The door was red for them, and if they only had to answer this color was blue, but the color red somehow interfered with reporting the color blue, because the transformation from the syllable to color was automatic. And quite surprisingly, a significant effect was also observed with the non-synesthetes, which I thought would serve as a negative control. This was quite surprising. So this finding led me to suspect that Solfa color synesthesia is quite prevalent in the general population. So I performed a set of online surveys to investigate this issue. One survey was performed in 2020 with 229 unselected students, college students, and the second survey was conducted in 2022 with 302 students. The first survey, both surveys used the retest protocol. In the first test, they performed the they were administered, they were asked whether they possessed this condition. They were asked whether they feel colors to do, re, mi, etc. And they performed a color picking test to pick colors for them, even though even in cases where they did not see colors, they reported that they do not feel colors. They had to pick colors anyway. And then 5 weeks later, they did the same thing. On the second survey, we skipped this color picking task and did this troop experiment. Here is the self-report rate of possessing Solfa color synesthesia in Japanese college students. In survey 1, it was like 20% of subjects reported yes in the first test. But interestingly, after retest, the ratio of participants reporting having synesthesia increased significantly. My interpretation is that the color picking test gave them the opportunity to think about their unconscious tendency for synesthesia, and that made them aware of their latent sensations. Importantly, this effect was absent in survey 2, which did not include this color picking task. So this increase in the reported position of synesthesia was not a mere time effect or response bias induced by demand characteristics. Okay. And these are the colors selected by the self-reported synesthetes who answered yes to the question whether they feel colors to do, re, mi. The colors, as you can see, the colors are quite similar to those that were selected by our synesthetes in our original experiment. These small lines indicate individual subjects, and these two columns show the color for the test and the retest. They are very consistent over time, and they are very similar between subjects. And these colors at the bottom show the average colors. What was more interesting was that very similar results were obtained for those who answered no or maybe to that question. When they were forced to select colors, their choices closely resembled those of synesthetes, and even when they are not aware of their sensations. Finally, this is a result of the strip test. This was also quite surprising. The effect of stimulus incongruity was significant when all subjects were analyzed together, disregarding the results of self-report. So the subjects were slower in reporting the color of syllables when the colors were incongruent. The color of these stimuli were based on the results of survey 1. I just used the average color of all participants in survey 1 and just used them to create these stimuli in the survey 2. So if I had customized the colors for individual subjects, I probably have got a larger effect. So to summarize, I overviewed the Solfa color synesthesia, which I first described several years ago. In this condition, Solfa syllables in music are linked to color, or mostly the hue dimension of color. The association is automatic, and in that it does not require effort or top-down attention. It does not require absolute pitch, and the latent form of this condition is quite prevalent in Japan. And the remaining question is how are these colors determined? I have prepared some slides to speculate on this, but due to time, I just stop here and get and answer questions. And if you have time later, I can maybe share you my thoughts about why these syllables get their colors. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks for very interesting talk. Is there any questions? Okay, yes, please, the teacher.
Okay. Thank you. It's a very fascinating talk. I wasn't aware of the Solfa color synesthesia at all. Thanks very much. I have quite a few questions, but anyway, one of the things that interests me was that you said absolute pitch is not necessary, and of course it's not necessary for general musical talent as well, as we know. But absolute pitch also, as far as I know, is hereditary, whereas I'm just wondering whether normal synesthesia, other types of anesthesia, seem to have a hereditary component. But I'm just wondering whether this kind of the Solfa color synesthesia may be due to the way the people are taught music. I just wondered, because it's quite common in Japan, because it may be the way that, I don't know how exactly it's taught in Japanese, but I come from South India, where it was in the South Indian classical music, Carnatic music. One aspect of that is take the particular notes of the key and improvise it in various ways. And we do it very fast, sometimes as many as 4 or 8 notes or more within a second, right? They do it very fast. And maybe that's how it's also Japan, the music is taught using the do, re, mi, so fa, la, ti, those words themselves. I wonder whether it depends upon how the music is taught and what is the prevalence of that in Japan among musicians.
Okay, thank you for an important question. I absolutely think that this condition is affected by music education. In Japan, one feature of music education in Japan is that we use the Solfa syllables do, re, mi very often, rather than the pitch names like C, D, E.
Yeah, right.
To refer to the pitch names.
Right.
So that's one important aspect, and many. So C, D, E are alphabets. So they also might have their synesthetic colors of their own, apart from the pitch with the relationship to the pitch. So in that sense, do, re, mi are naive with respect to their previous association with colors. So maybe that condition makes it easier for these syllables to get their colors from scratch in education.
And how common is it? If you take into the percentage, do you know?
Percentage of what?
How common is it? Is it 1 in 100 would have a synesthesia, or 1 in more common?
Which type of synesthesia? Solfa color?
Solfa color, yeah.
It's quite common. These are like yeah, it's like 300 students answer these colors to the question, what color is do, re, etc. So like 20% report that they do experience colors. So they are like 20% are aware of this condition when they're asked.
All right. Okay. Thank you.
So just to follow up this, in a sense, you're saying that the self-report percentage of the Solfa color synesthesia is 20% in Japan, but actually, everybody is Solfa color synesthesia according to this data.
Yeah, well, that's what this data shows.
That's really surprising, crazy.
Yeah, it's hard to believe. I know it's quite hard to believe. I was surprised by this result also, but this is what I got for my students.
I see. So here, for this experiment, you didn't ask or you didn't solicit the people suspecting some kind of synesthesia at all, and just get the 300 people.
No. These are students that were enrolled in my class in university, in college. They were not selected by their position of Solfa color synesthesia or any kind of music education. They were just students that received my lecture.
And they possibly read your book or something.
No, I confirmed that, and I didn't mention anything about synesthesia prior to this test.
I see.
Okay. The topic of the course was music and sound and music, the science of sound and music. So they were interested in music, but that's about the bias, only bias I can think of.
Wow.
Any other questions?
Yeah, Kian-san.
Yes, thank you very much, Itoh-san, for your presentation. It's fascinating. So I have a clarification question regarding your experiment with the task asking people to first report the Solfa syllable and then report the color.
Yeah, this one?
Yes, so on the right figure, the accuracy one, you mentioned that the accuracy in reporting the color does not exceed the accuracy of reporting the Solfa syllable. Just to clarify, what happens here is that people report the color which they associate with the reported Solfa syllable.
That's a great question. I'm sorry, I didn't confirm that. I didn't analyze individual answers, so I didn't confirm that. But that's what I think what occurred.
I see. Another question is regarding the definition of color synesthesia here. So I'm not very up to date with synesthesia literature, but my previous understanding with synesthesia of auditory experience is that when people hear a tone, in your case the Solfa syllable, and people actually see the color appearing in front of them. But in your experiments, it seems to be more about people associating a color with the experience of hearing a Solfa syllable, but not necessarily seeing it.
That's also a great question. It's very, very difficult to define synesthesia, and the definition of synesthesia has not been agreed between different researchers. The most typical one, as you mentioned, in case most strong synesthesia, you actually see colors, but there are more weaker types of synesthesia in which they only associate images of colors with certain inducers. Those are also called synesthesia by many researchers in this field. So how do we confirm that? To confirm that, the two major procedures for confirming the validity of synesthesia, the retest consistency, the time consistent test, and also the test of automaticity, such as that the one I did with the strip task. So there are objective measures to confirm that association is there. I mean, even though the conscious sensation might be fragile and more imagery like than real perception. Okay.
I see. Thank you very much.
Okay, and Angus.
Yeah, hi. Very interesting talk. I just had a question. I had two questions. One to do with this slide, actually. So, with this do re mi fa sol la ti do system, as you say, the pitch is dependent on the relationship with the other notes, right? So I just wanted to ask, with this experiment, when you present a pitch stimulant, what is it that provides the context as to whether it should be do, re, mi, fa, sol?
Yeah, that's right. I didn't explain that. It was in the key of C major, and the subjects supposedly understood that the key was in C major, because the only C, D, E, F, G, A, B were presented repeatedly, in practice and in the main task, there are no other like sharps and flats. So the key was in C major auditorily.
I see. Because I was wondering if you've considered of like just not having that sort of preset context and just presenting random pictures, and then just see maybe people have some sort of ongoing background condition where they contextualize the pictures. I don't know what you can do with that sort of idea, but it just seems kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then my second question was about you're finding that people who don't say that they have synesthesia report the same colors for these do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. And I was wondering, I think you mentioned that you might talk about it later, but it sounds kind of almost like a boba kiki effect, but with colors and sounds. Is that one of the interpretations that you're going into, or?
Well, not actually like Baba Kiki. No, probably not. I'm not. Those kind of cross correspondences occur at probably low level processing, like the shapes are associated with the phonetic or the the acoustic property of the sounds probably. But my hypothesis is that the colors and Solfa syllables are associated at a very high level of cognition rather than the auditory acoustic feature of the stimuli.
I see. Okay, thanks. Very interesting.
Okay, next, Ching.
Okay, thank you for your talk. It's very interesting, and it's my first time I see such a conclusion. And my question is about a previous slide where you introduce pitches and syllables as helix. Can you?
This one here?
Yeah, the one next. Yeah, my question is this. It's these two figures on the right-hand side, the actual structure of the syllables?
What do you mean by the structure of the syllables?
Like if you apply MDS to the similarity between...
Okay. No, actually no. Probably no. In Do, Re, Mi, Fa, Sol, La, Si are organized in the context of musical key. The musical key determines the relationship between individual notes. For example, if you hear So, then the next note will probably be Do, more often Do, than Re, for example. If you hear Do, the next note in a melody will be Re or Mi rather than Fa or Mi, because melodies change in small steps rather than big steps. So the pitch relationships is very complex. It's not probably organized in this kind of circle as you as you asked. Okay.
Yeah. And then is there a structure, or is there a structure of those syllables? Have you? Is this such research?
Well, my hypothesis, my thinking is that these syllables have a different rank order in your mental representation. Like Do has a higher rank than Fa, for example, in the mental representation, and that's the order reflecting the importance or the note within the context. Do is very important because it is a bass note, the tonal center of the key. So Do has its very special position within the context of a tonality. That is why I think the Do gets the color red.
I see your point. So maybe red is the most important color in human beings. I see. Yes.
The alphabet A, the number 1, or the Japanese kana A, they all have the color red. as they are the most representative member of their category. So the most dominant element in the category tends to have the color red.
I see.
And the second dominant one gets the color yellow, green, or blue, and so on, like that.
Yeah. Thank you. I was about to ask about the common points between this syllabus and color structure, but you already answered it. So thank you. Yeah. Good.
Okay, then let's go to the general discussions. Does anyone has question to both speakers?
Yeah, maybe I'll then start. And maybe, Itoh-san can
Yeah, I will
stop sharing so that we can feature the speaker.
Yeah. Let me. I'm trying right now.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Thank you. This both talks are really great, and it in a sense kind of deepened my kind of question. Especially from the Itoh-san's conclusion about though or red as a primary color was most important, and also I learned that culture-wise as well as development-wise, red seems to come as a fast color, right, to acquire. But from the brain response-wise, Kuriki-san, or maybe in any other kind of biological explanation-wise, or any philosophical reason or mathematical or whatever, why is red so special is very unclear to me. Do you have any ideas about it? For example, the red is something that causes very small variance in the relationship or the neural response or anything. Do you have any explanation why red is primary?
Me?
Yeah.
It's a very difficult question. But when the people achieves color names, starts to get a color name, the first color name appears in everything is red. But before that, the categorization between dark and bright appears at the beginning. And one of the reasons because the red is used is probably because it has to be used to name object. And one thing that appears naturally as a color variation is sky and land and fire probably. And to distinguish these, red can be one of the main object to name main color to name object, and also the color of the fruits ripes into red, which is a sign to tell that it is ripe. So red is one of the major thing that appears in our daily life as a vital sign for our survival probably. That's my speculation. It's entirely speculation.
What do you think, Itoh-san?
I don't know. I have no idea. I totally have no idea why red has this large place in our cognition. But my guess is that it concerns a really high level of cognition, color processing, probably higher than those studied by Creeky sensei. It's if you have like a category of things, like a color category or alphabets with these discrete elements, you will always have a you don't learn the elements all at once. You usually learn elements one by one in order, and you learn alphabet A very first, earlier than the letter Q, and you learn the syllable do before you learn so or si. And in that sense, the first color that we learn to identify is red for some unknown reason. And due to that, this firstness, due to that fact that it gets learned at the very first, gives red this dominance characteristics of being a representative color. And then as you learn other colors and increase your vocabulary of color terms, the other color gets their place in your cognitive map, and they secure their place in the cognitive map. They start to occupy the color space where the red did not cover, and then new color terms appear to filling other leftover spaces, and those the mental maps of those colors get smaller and smaller as because there's less space left, and so it's just that the order of learning or the creating the mental map that determines this importance or representativeness or the dominance of the colors.
So then, would you both predict that, let's say, other animals, especially like insects, for example, would they have no sort of innate bias towards red or anything, like in terms of brain response as well as a behavior response or anything? Or maybe, if we have some kind of, species that doesn't actually eat red fruit or doesn't approach to the red object, let's say the fish in the sea, do they have a different primary color?
Very difficult question. Yes.
Nothing is known about this.
No. There may be some bias in bee, for example. They are trying to search for honey based on the ultraviolet, but they have different structure of color vision systems, so bias could be different.
I see. If no one has other questions, Kyanshin.
Yes, I have another question for Itoh-san. This is probably a bit minor, but I'm going to ask it anyway. So do you think there are any relations between the presence of color synesthesia in person and their musical preferences? Because there are genres of music such as impressionist music, they are created almost intended to create some strong imagery in people when you appreciate them, and that's in contrast to any other kind of music where you appreciate its melodic properties. So do you think it's possible for people who are able to see or associate colors with Solfa syllables more likely to like impressionist music?
Okay, thank you for the great question. Of course, music can be an inducer of color sensations, but what I've presented today is very specific. It's only one aspect of music. That concerns the note names in terms of the fixed do and movable do sonorization. So it's a very different level or kinds of processing that evoke color from the music color synesthesia and Solfa color synesthesia. So they can coexist, but not always. Not always. Solfa color synesthesia is probably highly prevalent in Japan, but the music color synesthesia in the way you told me is probably less common. So they're quite different phenomena. And in regards to the impressionist music, one feature of those music, like the music of Debussy, is that they're sort of they're approaching atonality. I mean, they're losing their tonality, which means that the characters of the do re mi fa sol la si syllables notes become less distinguishable. I mean, atonal means less character of individual notes. So with atonal music, the colors of solfa tends to get pale, less clear. That's what I think what happens. I've not tested this, but the colors of solfa syllables obtain their colors from the character, how they function in music, their characters. So it's probably the colors are related to how those sounds are interpreted by your brain in terms in the context of music. Yeah.
I see.
I hope
Thank you very much.
answered.
Thank you very much.
And maybe I'll ask also another question to both of you. In the sense, Creeky-san's brain imaging results suggest that even just a simple color patch kind of stimulus or color flicker activates lots of brain lesions, right?
Yeah.
And Itoh-san's fourth choice questions about solfa and the color synesthesia also implies that maybe this kind of connection is potentially everywhere, like between potentially any kind of modalities. If I extrapolate both of the finding, but is it plausible? Or has anybody tried to test something like this? Let's say if you force people to report like taste and then introduce the taste and then report about the color or some kind of any character like important person and then associate the color, would they report very similar kind of result and also activate similar kind of brain lesions? So that's sort of two separate questions, but to both of you, how much of these intermodal synesthesia is common or possible from both neuroscientific and also behavior study?
Well, I didn't look into detail in other parts of the brain, visual cortex, because I mainly focused on the mechanisms of color vision. But yes, as after hearing the Itoh sensei's talk, it could quite some participants might have been imagine tone, for example, when they are watching at the color stimulus, and that have activated the area related to musical kind of processing. But I didn't ask the participant about that aspect, so yeah, I will check that sometime.
Regarding your question, I will share you a slide. I ask, along with solfa color synesthesia, I also ask the participants to select colors for Japanese kana and for school subjects. Do you see this?
Yeah.
This slide here?
Maybe can you enlarge it?
Yeah. Do you see this?
That's the presenter mode.
Okay. Hyoji outline. How can you nullify this thing? I just.
I think if you just click here.
Here, where? Click where?
The bottom.
Here.
The bottom. Here, okay.
No, that's the opposite. I don't know.
Yeah,
it's all right. It's all right.
Okay. If I ask subjects to pick colors for IUL or Kokugo, language, math, science, shakai, social science, and English, these are the colors that subjects pick, even though they do not report that they see colors with them. See, so these kinds of things are probably more common than we might think. and my hypothesis regarding how the colors are determined is that high-ranking elements like the do, re, mi, so, and language, math, and science, they get high-ranking colors like blue, red, green, yellow, and low-ranking subjects elements like English or Fa or C gets low-ranking colors like pink. Or you get an idea. So my kind of dream, my speculation is that this kind of ordering of elements within a category is very common, and due to those ordering, the elements are loosely associated with colors, and in a way that the order in the high-ranking elements get colors of high-ranking colors, and the ranking of colors is determined by this evolution color which was briefly mentioned by Creeky sensei. These are the order of the color acquisition in language, in the evolution language. These colors are high-ranking, and these colors are low-ranking, and high-ranking elements get these kinds of colors, and low-ranking elements get these colors in synesthesia. That's kind of my guess how things acquire color at the level of cognition. I think I have a question, and somebody is raising hand.
Oh yeah. It's about what you just said. It seems to be hypothesizing that in a domain, the most important thing is associated with color red. Is that true?
I'm not sure if it's true. It's just a hypothesis.
Yeah. I'm saying your hypothesis. It looks like you're hypothesizing that. Yeah.
But phenomenologically, this rule applies to a lot of things, like the most representative person in a group get a red costume, for example, in an idol group, for example.
Okay. Yeah.
It's a very loose speculative hypothesis. It's just something that I'd like to test in the future.
I have a question. May I?
Go ahead.
Yeah. The color red is actually a very remarkable or obvious color for the trichromatic vision, but it is sometimes difficult to see for individuals two cones. It's called color anomaly, for example. Have you ever tested this color tone association or color letter association in this kind of people?
Thank you for the question. No, actually did not. Since I had like 300 subjects, probably some of them were like had the condition you mentioned, but I didn't check that. I really should have done that. Yes.
Yeah. Thank you.
Actually, I have one question for Kuriki sensei.
Sure.
So there are two kinds of representation: color appearance and color category. Which do you think is higher in hierarchy, or are they parallel, or is one processing higher than the other?
Well, it exists in parallel, but it's considered to be the color categorization is much more higher in order, because if you test the color memory, for example, it is strongly associated with a color difference. For example, if you are asked to remember greenish yellow, and the participants were asked to pick up a color which was told to remember, they tended to pick up green or yellow. They don't pick up greenish yellow. So it is strongly associated with color category. And the higher order mechanism is probably using color categorization than the lower level. And the color appearance is much more lower, probably.
So there's probably a link with language, do you think?
Sure, yes. So the Stroop effect happens with color category, probably, not by the color appearance.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Yamada Sensei may be raising hand.
Yes, I have a question for Itoh-san. Is it the same for people with color blindness that red is dominant? Have you ever tested?
No. I regret that I didn't test that. I have not.
What do you think?
Well,
what do you think?
I think there's one study that studied color representation in blind subjects, and surprisingly, their mental color representations are quite similar from normally sighted people. That study performed a multidimensional scaling of colors of vegetables, I think, and the obtained maps were quite similar between colorblind people and normal people with normal vision. So at the very high level of color categorical representation, the colors probably converge to a similar kind of Qualia map or structure or organization, I think. Well, I'm not. I don't know much about Qualia structure, but that's what I think about the color representation at the very highest order level of representation. That's totally.
So they might. I see. So they may say the same way like normal people regarding like math language, what color they think, or those.
Yeah, and I cannot imagine how they perceive, the color, but it is similar to ours in a sense that the colors are perceived as being similar for us, are perceived as being similar for them also. So the relative relationship is probably similar. What do you think, Creeky Sensei?
Yes, as Itoh Sensei mentioned, that some report has been confirmed that color naming structure, for example, in colorblind person, anomalous person, has a similar map of color, like in trichromat 3 cone person. And I know one dichromat who has only 2 cones, so it's difficult to discriminate red-green differences, but he is able to tell which is red and which is green in the same way as trichromats. They are using some kind of experience-based strategy to figure out which is red and which is green. So mental structure of the color space, despite of their disability in color discrimination, they seem to have a 3-dimensional color space like that, like us. So if the association of the tone and color is made in higher order cortex, as Itoh Sensei mentioned, it is quite possible that the association could be quite similar. And that's why I asked him whether he tested the color vision of the participants in his experiment.
I see. Okay. Thank you. Very interesting. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Maybe then I'll also ask another question if nobody else. Then so the as you said, intensity-wise, from white to black, that appears evolutionary early and also common across the species. That makes a lot of sense. And then, but the white color is quite strange and also very difficult to address. And why red as a primary is even more difficult because there is some kind of symmetry breaking going on here. And then, if this is a way for the brain to kind of introduce kind of higher dimensionality for a particular point in space, like you have intensity as a sort of a strength of something, but orthogonal to that, if you have a color, then you can add further dimensionality. And that seems to be a very good strategy for anything potentially, not only for color or a sound, but also taste and also smell or even touch or something like that. Then that would potentially predict that the similar kind of structure, mathematical structure of the qualia across all the dimensions, and also potentially hidden synesthesia, like Itoh-san kind of revealed, even across any kind of modalities. So that's something that I'm very excited and worth really pursuing. I don't know. It's not really a question, but it's more of the comment. What do you think? Like even faces and things like that. That probably is possible, right?
Well, my impression about the emergence of red is because of the, as I mentioned before, the people who developed or invented the word red must have some kind of information that have to be told in the different dimension as a light and dark. But why red is probably because if you're talking about object, for example, you have to dissociate it from the background. So the background color tend to be greenish or the sand color or sky color. So other than these colors, the target color could be red at the first place. That is probably the emergence of red as the first color term and first color category other than blue and dark.
I see what you say. Yeah, blue and green are more prevalent as a thing in the background, and if you have to segregate a figure from ground, that's the sort of the first choice.
Yes. So the background color tends to be named quite late in terms of color term. For example, the sand color, brown, or that kind of name appears quite in the order of the color word emergency.
I see. So then that also links Itoh-san's sort of theory, right? Like importance as a red, or that also means that the background as some kind of default, which is the color of the green or blue.
Yeah.
And then in contrast, red or important, salient, is the one that emerges as the first thing to be recognized. I see.
That's a speculation, but many people think similar way in our field.
I see. I see. Then Father, is there any other questions? Then maybe my last question is that what do you think about the sort of the relationship between color and the texture? Is texture to me, texture seems to be the more fundamental kind of thing, and the color as an isolated property in a Qualia is quite artificial.
What kind of texture do you?
By texture, what I mean is a sort of surface color kind of thing, or surface. Also, your surface of the shirt and also hair. And skin and things like that. That seems to be the primary phenomenological thing, and the color is in a sense abstracted out of it.
Yes.
Even at the level of appearance, right? So the primary thing may be the texture, and then
yes, I think so. Yeah, as an object property, one of the goals of the human vision, or the mission of the human vision, is to identify the object. And that is why we argued about the color of the dress as a surface property. And the color is one of the dimensions among these surface properties that can be generalized to different kind of materials, I think. And they are closely linked, I agree. So the color, same color paint with, for example, glossy surface or bumpy surface, seems to appear as different color. So they are closely linked. But how they are linked is very difficult to approach. And we haven't got any systematic study about that. For example, one of my friends working on the gloss perception, material perception guy, says that glossiness appears best when it is colored in green. But other color doesn't seem to make it more easy to recognize the glossiness of the object. So there must be some kind of link, but I don't know why.
That also sounds like a bit related to why this, color as a concurrent is always, more prevalent than the other direction of the synesthesia. Right? That's what Itoh-san said. It seems it's kind of flexible modality, and I don't know why, but it seems it's always the color that is associated.
So can I ask? So I'm sorry. Is there any synesthesia between the surface and then color regarding now this question? The question for Itoh-san.
Yeah. Surface and color. Surface and color. I'm not sure about association between surface and color, but in the realm of music, visual texture is often associated with the timbre of a tone. Like the different musical instruments give different sense of texture to them in synesthesia. Like the sounds of oboe and sound of flute, they can be differentiated in the shape and sort of like a texture kind of qualia, rather than color. So those are two different phenomena. That's the timbre and the texture, one in the audio domain and one in the visual domain. So, but there must be something that are common to those two features that gets united. I don't know why, I don't know how, but that's the phenomenon.
I see. I wonder if something like related to the motion, kind of like a movement or something like inference. Yeah, I'm not sure though.
Yeah,
because the color is very static, I think.
Yes. But color is static, but color is a property of something that can be stationary or that can be moving. So yeah. Some synesthetes report colored line moving around when they listen to music, but I don't know. The sounds themselves have movements. I'm not a synesthete, but I sometimes feel that the sounds tend to move in a lot of directions when you go to a concert hall and listen to classical music. That's also a synesthesia-like phenomenon that I think many people have. So, yeah.
Aniko?
Yeah, I have just a short question. This goes to both of you. How do you think, or how do you integrate the effects of psychoactive substances like psilocybin and any kind of like this kind of drug influences into your perspective on color and color changes? Like, what is their role? Are they revealing something about the brain, how color perception changes under certain psychoactive conditions?
Sorry, I didn't recognize what you said about the.
So like LSD or magic mushrooms, people tend to record or tend to report weird color experiences, and I was wondering how. Yeah, what do you think of these substances in relation to your research?
It's very difficult, but as long as the brain activity is just or the color signal is based on the brain activity, the changes in brain activity could induce some kind of changes in color. That is yes, but I don't exactly know how these drugs induce the changes in the appearance. If it is associated with particular object, for example, it is occurring at a very high level of visual system or brain, which is after the recognition of object or something like that. So, yeah, I'm sorry, but I don't have a clear answer. How about Itoh Sensei?
Well, I don't have an answer also because the use of drugs is is an exclusion criteria for identifying synesthesia. Synesthesia is a condition that occurs without the use of such medication. So I have not looked into those effects of drugs on this kind of sensation. I just don't know about it. I'm sorry.
I see. Thank you.
Okay.
And then when I ask one question to Creeky sensei and Itoh sensei, first, Creeky sensei, in the case of such as subjects see the same color but perceive different color appearance, in that case, such as about dress color illusions, would it react different in color brain regions?
Color, sorry?
Brain regions.
Brain. Well, I think it's based on our assumption. It is probably due to the interpretation of the scene or scene illumination condition. So the brain activity itself is quite similar, but and the processed area is quite same, I guess. Yeah, so they are not occurring in a different place of the brain, I guess.
But that's not empirically tested, right?
No.
And in the case of dress, pretty much 50% of people say opposite thing?
I see some reports saying the bias toward one type, and the other report says the other side bias toward the other side. So there is no, I don't know, a systematic report about that.
But that can be then empirically testable.
Yes. Yes.
Oh, okay. Thank you. And for the Itoh sensei, I'd like, because I'm now studying some sensory information processing. So if Solfa syllable is important to color synesthesia, then I felt there is no sensory regions involved in synesthesia. What do you think about this?
I'm sorry, due to the connection, I couldn't hear you.
Sorry. Okay. Because if you said Solfa syllable is important to color synesthesia, I felt in that case, then no sensory region involved in synesthesia.
No sensory region?
Sensory region in our brain is involved in synesthesia.
Sensory region.
Yeah.
Which sensory region? You mean the motor sensory? What sensory region?
Such like visual sensory or auditory sensory are not involved in synesthesia because Solfa syllable to color is there is no involved in such sensory.
I see. Regarding Solfa's color synesthesia, I think the association occurs at the very high cognitive modal level of representation. But that's not always the case for other types of synesthesia, like the intensity and the size of an object, or the pitch and brightness. Those kinds of forms of synesthesia are probably supported by lower levels of processing. So those kinds of cross-modal associations can occur at different levels of processing. And what I talked today is a phenomenon of a very high cognitive level thing. So it depends on specific the form of synesthesia, whether it's a sensory or cognitive or what level.
Yeah. Okay, thanks very much. Okay, then is there no other question? Then thank you everyone for participating today, and thank you our speakers, Creeky sensei and Itoh sensei. It was great discussion and talk, and yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
I enjoyed it very much. Yes, thank you everyone.
Okay, I'll then now